He pulled up outside the hospital, his fingers white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The old man's warning echoed in his mind. Every word burned into his thoughts like scripture. The end is near. Prepare. It had all sounded so surreal then. Now it was a nightmare he couldn't wake from. The storm had passed, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. But the real storm, David felt, was just beginning. He looked up at the hospital's front entrance. Inside waited his sister Emily. A historian by profession, she'd always dismissed talk of prophecy as nonsense. But she had called him, her voice shaking, begging him to come. Inside the hospital, the fluorescent lights flickered weakly as if reluctant to shed any light. The staff bustled about, their faces tight with exhaustion. Something in the air felt wrong, not the usual smell of antiseptic and bleach, but something older, heavier, like the presence of something watching. He found Emily in the waiting room. She stood as he approached, her eyes wide, clutching a journal to her chest. "Thank God you came," she whispered, pulling him into a hug. "You need to see this?" They sat in a secluded corner as she opened the journal. It was worn leather-bound, filled with pages of frantic handwriting and faded ink drawings. "This belonged to one of my students," she said. "She found it buried in a sealed box beneath an abandoned church. She brought it to me 2 days ago, said she had dreams telling her to dig." David turned a page. There were drawings of beasts, symbols of fire and serpents, stars falling from the heavens. Then a passage dated over a century ago, written in a spidery script. "When the 7th moon weeps blood and the veil is torn, the watcher shall descend. Let him who has ears hear. The 11th hour comes swiftly." He looked at her, his voice low. "This matches what the old man told me. The 11th hour. He said the signs had begun." Emily nodded. "There's more. I cross-referenced some of the symbols. They're ancient, older than Christianity even. It's Babylonian, some Hebrew. But the way they're arranged, it's like someone pieced together fragments of lost prophecy." David's heart pounded. "Why now?" she hesitated. "Because it's happening again. Look at this." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through images, videos of birds flying in circles until they dropped dead. Lakes bubbling with no cause. A church in Argentina that burned to the ground, though untouched by flame. There's a pattern geographically and chronologically. Something is building. Suddenly, the lights dimmed. A cold wind swept through the waiting room. David turned. The air shimmered, and for a moment, saw something shadowy figure standing behind the nurse's station, unmoving, eyes glowing faintly. Then they vanished. Emily reached out, her voice tight. "You saw something, didn't you?" "Yes," he breathed. "And they were watching us." Before Emily could respond, a nurse screamed. Down the hall, a patient had begun seizing, levitating 2 feet off the bed. Alarms blared. Doctors rushed in, but when they reached him, the man's body collapsed, a seared handprint on his chest. Emily and David stood frozen, then turned and ran. As they left the hospital, David noticed something in the sky. The moon full and red, bleeding into the night. Emily followed his gaze. "The 7th moon," she whispered. David felt the old man's words pressing in again. The end is near. Prepare. What did it mean? Why was he suddenly a part of something so terrifyingly huge he couldn't even begin to understand?